All right, so our second module, managing Teams rooms. So the first step, we went through ordering our Teams rooms, configuring accounts, installing them, and getting them up and running. So now that we have Teams rooms up and running, how do we manage these things? So we're going to go through the available management options, have a better understanding of which tools to use, and then a little bit on how to monitor your Teams rooms environment. Unmanaged. Unmanaged means use no management tools. Don't add it to Active Directory. Just let it roll. Use a local administrator account whose password you've changed and go from there. This may seem crazy, but it's not. As I said, Teams rooms will be able to auto update. And do you really need to? Are you really going to improve the environment by installing tools and Active Directory and Azure Active Directory and Intune and antivirus and all these things? Are you actually going to have a better meeting experience or a better managed experience? Maybe, but don't think that this is the worst idea. So unmanaged is certainly a way you can go. On-premises management. So this is basically you have Skype for Business on premises. You're not ready for the Teams move yet. So you would manage this using Active Directory, Exchange on premises, Skype for Business. System Center Configuration Manager, now called Microsoft Endpoint Manager Configuration Manager, or Endpoint Management Configuration Manager, something like that. The XML configuration file, I'll mention that now, but we're not going to jump into it in this training. You can copy an XML file to each Teams Rooms device in order to change the settings of the Teams Rooms app. So, for example, if you want to change the custom background, the default background that you see on the displays, you can copy up a JPEG or a PNG file and an XML file, reboot the device, and you'll have a new background on your screen. So XML configuration file is the way to go. And PowerShell. You can't do much with PowerShell with the Teams Rooms app, against the Teams Rooms app, but we're going to have some examples here of what you can pull with PowerShell. Hybrid. So this is probably where everyone is. Some amount of on-premises stuff with some amount of Microsoft 365 stuff. So now you can use Teams Admin Center, or coming soon, I should say, is Teams Admin Center. Skype for Business on premises or online, depending on where you're at in that move. You can use if you have Azure Active Directory, you then have Active Directory syncing to Azure AD. You can now add in Intune. And then again, a lot of the same things as we saw on the previous slide with PowerShell and XML. If you're pure M365, these are the tools you'll use. Azure AD, Exchange Online, optionally, Skype for Business Online, Microsoft Teams, PowerShell still, XML, and Endpoint Manager can all be used in a cloud environment. This is not a bad idea either. Even if you or your customers are in a transition phase between on-premises and cloud, there's no, I was gonna say there's no reason, there probably is a reason. There are very few reasons why you couldn't just straight cloud attach your Teams rooms. And then use straight cloud management. You don't need to get into this whole hybrid 18 different tools. There are a lot of compelling reasons to straight cloud attach Teams Rooms device. And then we have managed meeting rooms. So there's a Microsoft service that can help you do this. So instead of you having to worry about all these tools of how do you manage, how do you configure, how do you monitor, Microsoft managed meeting rooms is a solution. It's 24/7, 365 monitoring. So we always keep an eye out on your Teams rooms for you and let you know when there are problems. We'll fix a lot of the problems for you. So that is also an option. So we have everything from unmanaged, just basically turn it on, change the admin password and let it go, install a resource account, then change the admin password, let it go, all the way through to having Microsoft monitoring these 24/7, 365. So what can you do with PowerShell? So if you remember, Teams Rooms is just an app that runs on top of Windows. The app itself has basically no support for PowerShell. So PowerShell is really managing the Windows portion of PowerShell. So PowerShell is a command line management tool that you can do tons of powerful things with and create scripts and get all kinds of things. As it concerns Teams rooms, it's primarily there for inventorying purposes. Get attached device, get app status, things like that. You can transfer files if it's a domain joined Teams rooms. You can pull log files, things like that. In order to use PowerShell against Teams rooms, you're going to have to enable remote PowerShell. So there's a command you're going to have to run. Keep in mind, running this does lower the out-of-the-box security just a little, in that you now allow external PowerShell into your devices. So just be aware of that. But once you have enabled PowerShell remote, you can also, by the way, if you enable it, remote desktop to the machine and run PowerShell locally. But there are a few other issues with that, such as if people are in a meeting and you remote in, things get squirrely. So you can get attached devices. So this is the kind of stuff you can get out here. This is a Logitech Rally system that we pulled the PowerShell information from. So you can see, status, is it okay, is it not okay, things like that. The version, what is the version of the app? When did the computer start? So if you look at that start time, January 15th, 2020 at 2:33:57 a.m. If you remember, I said every Teams rooms reboots every day at 2:30 a.m. Well, there you go, 2:33. So it took about 4 minutes for that machine to reboot. So you can get serial numbers and BIOS versions and things like that via PowerShell. So PowerShell is more for managing and monitoring the Windows side of the operation, not really for managing the Teams Rooms app. So Microsoft Teams Admin Center, this was announced at Ignite last September. Yeah, because it's always the week of my birthday. So last September, we showed Teams Admin Center, and we showed Teams Rooms within Teams Admin Center. So Teams Admin Center has been there a long time. If you look on the right-hand side under the devices section, you see Teams Rooms is going to show up there. We believe it's still going to happen this quarter. So by, June 30th, the last day of the quarter? By June 30th, you should start seeing this appear in Teams Admin Center. And this is the direction we're going for centralized management of Teams Rooms. So if you have Teams phones, it's the same kind of deal. You can see all of your phones registered there, push firmware updates, do things like that. So there's a list of things you can do. So here's an example of what it looks like. So here we have, in this example, there would be 10 Teams rooms totals. One is unhealthy, one is offline. So you can see in one quick view, what's the status? How many healthy meetings do we have? 99% of them are healthy. We've had almost 25,000 meetings. Average device usage over the course of a week. We can see on Friday, people tend to head home. Nobody wants that Friday meeting at 3 or 4 p.m. So you can get a lot of quick statistics on this. You can also drill into a specific device. So we can get details, so we can see when was this device last seen, what is the name of the device. We can download log files directly from it. We can remote restart the device. We get some quality metrics of just that device as opposed to everything else. So you can get some details on these devices. Here we can edit device settings. So we can, I remember there's a, if you're familiar with Teams Rooms, you know Skype settings.xml. I already mentioned the XML file. That's what you can do, for example, to change the background. You can do everything in the XML file now from Teams Admin Center. So it's a much cleaner, much easier way. Because the problem with the XML file is you need to copy a file to Teams Rooms, which means you have to open up some security so that you can actually copy the file there. This instead runs a service which goes to the Microsoft 365 cloud, pulls down any settings changes and applies them without having to open some of the ports on the machine. So there's more we can do with Admin Center. We can troubleshoot a call. So user reports that there was poor audio in a meeting. So in this example, we're going to drill into this conference room in STP Avanti. And if you look at the bottom right, you see audio quality poor. So in that meeting, there was poor audio quality. So we'll click on that meeting, and we can see then, let's see, click on the poor meeting, and then we can see one of the sessions had poor audio quality. It's not highlighted in red, but it's the only one that says poor. All the rest say good. And if you look at the blue circle at the top, or purple, everything's good except for a little bit of poor. So that's another indicator, visual indicator, that there may have been an issue on this. So we'll click on that poor call, and we get this header. So this header highlights that the poor call quality was caused by the network. So let's click on the network icon. Let's see what that has to say. It pulls up the metrics from the call quality diagnostics for this meeting and lets us know that the average round trip time was 784 milliseconds. The maximum round trip time was almost 2 seconds, and we had 55% packet loss. This is a bad call. Even if you were using the Satin codec that Brian Nice showed yesterday, I don't think Satin's going to fix this problem. So how do you know what are the what is good and bad round trip time if you're not living this all the time? Docs.microsoft.com, do a search for Teams media quality, and it'll show you the list of how much jitter, latency, those sort of things we expect to see. So I'm still there and back on that same header. Now I click on system. So let me see what this system was. And it tells me it was an Android 9.0 phone. So I can pretty much make an educated guess now that this attendee of the meeting was in a bad cell area. They had bad reception. They had a bad signal. That's why their performance was so bad. So this lets me know that it probably wasn't an issue with the Teams rooms because no one else had an issue, just the mobile, the person dialing in mobile, they had it. So great tool. This is the upcoming Teams Admin Center, and expect to see it by the end of June for you guys and your customers to start leveraging this. And again, the one thing, there'll be plenty of guidance and documentation about this, but the one thing to point out is Teams rooms have to be in one of the Teams modes, Skype for Business default, Teams, or Teams default with Skype, in order for them to register with Teams Admin Center. Azure Monitor. This is formerly called OMS, now called Azure Monitor. So what is Azure Monitor? Azure Monitor is a cloud service where you can send logs and other data up to it, and it can scan, and you can set some rules and thresholds, and when those get hit, it'll give you a notification. In our world, we can monitor event viewer entries, and when certain event viewer actions fire, it can send us an email or a notification that something has happened on our Teams rooms. So this is a way we can be kind of reactively notified, but we can get something pretty quickly, so we don't have to wait for users to tell us, hey, this conference room doesn't work, or we can get an alert and say, hey, this conference room has an issue. Let's send someone out to fix it immediately. So there's the MTR app. The MTR app writes to the Windows event log. Just like any good proper app, we use event log as well. On each MTR within Windows, you install the Azure Monitor agent, and you connect it to your Azure Monitor. Forget the name of it. I just looked at it today. Anyway, you connect it to your Azure Monitor instance, and then it'll start pushing everything up to Microsoft 365. And then when certain events fire, it can then send us a notification. So what are the requirements? You need a Azure subscription for Azure Monitor Log Analytics. That's the word I was looking for. You need an Azure subscription for Azure Monitor in order to use Log Analytics. You need to create custom fields. So Azure Monitor is just seeing all these event viewer things. It doesn't magically know what is a good event, what's a bad event. So you have to sit down and do a little bit of work. This is all documented in docs.microsoft.com, and underneath the Teams Rooms section, we tell you step by step how to do this. I didn't write the article. I went through it just like anyone else would, and I was able to get it to work because you're about to see the email that I was able to send myself. So the documentation is pretty solid on how to set this up. And then you install the monitoring agent on each one of your devices. Here's an email that I got. There was an issue. We are notifying you because there are 1 counts of Microsoft Teams Rooms application issues. We're not going to jump into exactly what it was. I believe to do this, I disconnected one of the cameras to force a hardware issue. So email notification. So you could send this email to your ticketing system to automatically generate tickets. There's a lot more you can do with Azure Monitor. I'm by no means an Azure Monitor expert. This is literally the first and only time I've used Azure Monitor, but it is pretty cool that, and it still works. I set this up. Is there a date on this email? Whatever. I set this up September 13th, 2019. That long ago? No, that's be a sample email. Anyway, from someone else. Anyway, it still works after months. Every now and then I'll get emails. I'm like, what is this? Oh, Azure Monitor. Forgot I set that up. Azure Monitor hasn't forgotten. Here are the log entries. These are available on docs.microsoft.com. So I'm not going to go through these or even really give you time to read them. Just gives you an example, this slide and the next slide, of the things you're going to see, if they're informational, if they're errors, what they check for. The top one, this is a hardware error event, so that the camera, speaker, microphone was disconnected. 4,000, an app restart event. You should get one of those every day at about 2:35 a.m. when the machine automatically reboots. So those are the events to capture, and then using Azure Monitor, you can monitor your Teams Rooms devices, however many you have. Managing Windows. So one of the things we want to point out is that this is not another computer. I've already referenced it a few times, that you don't want to treat this like an end user's laptop. It is not. Think of it as an appliance. Think of this as an appliance. One more time, this is not another computer. Think of it as an appliance. So treat it differently. This has much different needs, much different use cases than a traditional Windows computer. The way to manage the Windows side of Teams Rooms is through the Active Directories, Intune, Endpoint Manager, System Center Configuration Manager, and Group Policies, which is kind of Active Directory, right? This is a redundant slide, but I like the top part. This is not just another computer, so move on. Group Policies, things to consider with Group Policies and Intune. Create dedicated groups. Create a dedicated group policy, create a dedicated Azure AD group. Do not just add these to your PC groups, because your PC groups will have things like force password change, automate, turn the computer off after 15 minutes, hibernate modes. Well, the computer's off, somebody walks into the room, it's not going to automatically wake up. It's not, end users, hit the power button if, for power saving. Teams Rooms, no power saving. So do not add them to your existing OUs or your existing groups. Create new OUs, create new groups, create new dynamic groups, and set custom policies to these. Because again, this is not just another computer. Think of it as an appliance. Why would you apply things to this device, which has custom, unique needs that the average end user computer does not? Block inheritance. So even if you don't add it to the existing groups, you've got that core domain group policy that requires password changes and requires all that stuff. Well, as we saw earlier, as we discussed earlier, the resource account doesn't work well with a password change, because then one day you'll walk in and none of your MTRs work because they need a new password, and now you have to go to every single device and change the password. So block inheritance. Block any existing policies, create new unique policies just for these devices. And here's more. Here's getting into some of the security things. These are things that generally don't happen on your traditional end user PC. Like in that middle, deploy a keyboard filter. So keyboard filter is what we do to prevent pressing Control-Alt-Delete when you're signed in to the Teams Rooms app. We block that. For your end users, they have to have Control-Alt-Delete. We block Control-Shift-Escape. We block basically every keyboard command. This is not another computer. So we have already addressed the security concerns and the things we think are an issue. And so you don't really need to double down with policies that won't apply, and that'll probably end up breaking the team's rooms. If not immediately, then in 90 days when password changes happen. Hypervisor enforced code integrity. You probably don't have that installed on any of your laptops for your average end user, because that means you have to have hypervisor installed, Hyper-V. You probably don't do that for every end user. Again, think of this as an appliance, not as a regular Windows desktop. So Azure Active Directory, what is Azure Active Directory? It's basically Active Directory in the cloud. It's a directory that keeps track of policies, users, computers, devices, things like that, but cloud-based, which means you don't have any reliance. You don't have to have any reliance on any on-premises devices to manage. Azure AD joining, so the MTR can be joined to Azure AD. You can do it manually. You can go to settings, users, worker school. Done this a few times recently. Then down at the bottom, there's join Azure Active Directory. If you're fancy, you can use Windows Configuration Designer. You can create a provisioning package, push those to all of the Teams Rooms devices, and then they'll pick that up and then auto provision themselves. Or you can do a hybrid Azure AD join. I think, I'm not the Azure AD guy, but I believe this is where you join the machine to the local AD and then it gets pushed up to Azure AD. It gets replicated through Azure AD Sync through there. So there's plenty of ways to do this, to Azure AD join. We've talked about it before, we'll mention it again. Prefixes allow for dynamic grouping. This is super cool in Azure AD. You can say any machine that starts with MTR hyphen, put them into this custom group. So put them into, assign these specific Intune policies, not the policies everybody else gets. Assign these specific whatever policies, not the ones everybody else gets, because again, this is not just another computer. This is a dedicated appliance that is there to do one thing, and that's to run your meetings, doing a great job running your meetings. So again, those naming devices come in handy once it comes time to manage these devices, not just for IT administration purposes, get all computers with MTR dash, but being able to, without even having to do anything, the newest MTR in your environment automatically picks up these new policies just because of how you named them. Microsoft Intune. So Intune's a pretty cool way to do some management on Windows. Intune started as a mobile application management software. So basically help you manage the bring your own device, BYOD, in your environment, and now it's expanded to do a lot more. Surface hubs are pretty much only managed using Intune, and you wouldn't consider a Surface hub as bring your own device. If you're bringing your own Surface hub to work every day, I hope the wheels on that thing are pretty good, and you have a big car. So that's Intune. Lets you assign policies, lets you manage and maintain, and kind of limit or permit certain things on devices. We recommend automatic MDM enrollment. So when you Azure AD join the device, it automatically gets applied. It automatically gets set up within Intune as well. Only device target policies apply. This is important because the Skype user, the user that runs the Teams Rooms app, is not a domain user. It's a local user. So it can't get an Intune user policy. So keep that in mind. So you can only manage the physical device, the Windows. You cannot manage the user on there. So again, this is not like another computer. Think of it more as an appliance. Don't just sit there and throw your regular policies at it. Certain things you should and shouldn't do with Intune. OS version compliance should not be the same as on your regular PCs. As I mentioned a little while ago, we only support up to Windows 10 1903 as I stand here today. You may have your Windows PC compliance set to 1909. Well, you're out of compliance. At best, you're going to get an error in the Intune console about all of your Teams Rooms devices. At worst, they're going to get forced upgraded to 1908 or 1909, and chaos ensues. So keep an eye on what you should or shouldn't do. Do not treat these like regular computers. Device compliance policies. So even though there are some system ones, do not force password changes. We've already talked that a few times. But there are certain things you can definitely do. You can encrypt data storage. Data encryption, a lot of people think that solves all the world's problems. But again, end users do not copy files onto a Teams Rooms device at all, ever. Doesn't happen unless an administrator screwed up and let that happen. So if you have good administration and you're running a proper IT department, you really don't need disk encryption. Throw it on there. I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying don't assume things. Think through with these Teams Rooms, what are we getting? What are we accomplishing? And is this actually providing any value? Or is this stuff we just do because that's the way we do it? And that's the way we've always done it, and we're going to do it for everything that comes in. Think through about what policies you're applying and why you're applying them. Group policy, there isn't a ton, quite honestly, with group policy. It's kind of like PowerShell. Keep in mind that it's that Teams Rooms app that really is running on here that does all the goodness. And Teams Rooms app is managed by an XML file, the interface directly on the control panel, or coming soon, the Teams Admin Center. So group policy doesn't do a lot. I've mentioned group policy for those who don't know. It's a way on-premises Active Directory where you can push policies down to workstations to do all kinds of fun things. The main fun thing you can do with the Teams Room is use group policy for on-premises Active Directory joined Teams Rooms to push down quality of service. It's a whole different discussion. The whole different discussion about QoS and Microsoft Teams, and I'm not going to get into it. There's docs articles on it. I want to say, what is it? Somebody, aka.ms, something in Teams. But quality of service is very important. So applying QoS is a great thing to use group policy for. Oh, there it is, aka.ms QoS in Teams. Good, well done. So quality of service, that's about the only thing you really want to do with group policy with the Teams Rooms device. Again, it's not a traditional end user workstation. Just because it runs Windows doesn't mean it's the same thing as where you're used to. Update management, keep your hands off. Reboots nightly at 2:30 a.m. You can change at 2:30 a.m. It is just a scheduled task. So you can change that. So if you are in an environment like hospital or something else where you're kind of running around the clock, you can change that to a different window. We still recommend you reboot it daily, even if it's at a different time. There are reasons for that. Please follow our guidance. Don't sit there and say, oh, we're going to reboot it annually. Well, first off, how are you installing your patches if you're rebooting annually? We want to keep this thing secure. Nightly, make sure that new Windows security patches, new Teams Rooms app updates get installed within the same day of when they become available. So keep those reboots happening every night at 2:30. Windows releases, we certify Windows releases with the Teams Rooms app, and there's a reason for that. And we're trying to get to the latest version of Windows with the Teams Rooms app, but as Windows adds and removes features, the Teams Rooms app has to be adjusted to match those features, and sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's a lot more difficult. So do not manually update your Windows beyond what we say to update your Windows. Do the trusted app. I know a lot of companies are like, these workstations aren't allowed to go directly to Windows Update, but these aren't workstations, are they? They're what? Appliances. They're not end user workstations. So what exactly are you gaining by blocking them from getting to Windows Update? So keep that in mind. Resetting Microsoft Teams rooms. Let's say something's just happened, right? It happens. Hard drives fail, network cables go, cause whatever. Somebody installed Windows 1908 or 1909 on one of these workstations, and you can't. We've lost, for whatever reason, firewalls, proxies, whatever. The Teams Rooms app falls out of date. Can't get to the Windows Store. Can't update itself for whatever reason. So if you run into that situation where the Teams Rooms app just won't get updated, you look at it and you're like, holy cow, this one's on a year-old version of the Teams Rooms app, and we tend to push them fairly frequently. It's rare there's 2 or 3 months that there hasn't been a new app pushed out. So there's guidance there on how to do that. Pretty quick, pretty painless, about half hour of time, and you can run through the system recovery tool to fix an out-of-date app. Yeah, here you go. Download the Teams Rooms, select repair. I mean, it says system's now up to date, but in actuality, that's probably more than that. It's probably 45 minutes, and you're back up and running. The factory restore, this happens when things get really wonky, probably because somebody installed too many things. There was poor administration happening. Somebody assigned a bunch of group policies or Intune packages, and you tried to undo it, and it's just, you know what, we kind of need to hit the reset button on this guy. So here are the steps to do it. Download the install package. There's a PowerShell script, the recovery tool PowerShell script. Remove everything. This is all documented in docs.microsoft.com, so quick and easy to find. So click next and then click reset. And that takes about 2.5 hours because you're basically reinstalling Windows. So they're from the backup partition on the Teams Rooms device. But still faster and easier than having to do the full catastrophic recovery. Catastrophic recovery, it can be due to hard drive failure, machine overheated, whatever. Windows, and we're looking at basically software issues, because if it really is hardware, they're going to have to send you a new device or a new hard drive or whatever. But for whatever reason, Windows won't boot. Something happened during the firmware update of the compute module. Lord knows there's hundreds of reasons why you could end up in a situation like this. Fortunately, nowadays, it doesn't happen nearly like it used to, like 5 or 10 years ago. Like I remember the days where I was scared to force reset a PC. I'm like, oh God, please come back. Please don't get corrupted. Nowadays, it's like you can force reset and no worries. Anyway, deal with your vendor. Each vendor has their own certified Windows build with their drivers and with any customizations they need. So some of the vendors add additional value add to their Teams Rooms. Some do, some don't. That value add stuff gets put into their Windows license as well. So reach out to the vendor, work with them on how to get that how to reinstall from scratch. Like this compute module has never had an operating system before, back from that level. So all the vendors can help you with that. So all of this stuff, and I mentioned it in one slide before, what if you don't want to do it? It seems like a lot of work with Intune and Azure Active Directory and group policies and Teams admin centers and Azure Monitor. Where's the easy button? Here's the easy button. And I believe it just went GA this week, I think I saw something about read about that. So this is all available. It's been in tap since I think last October. 24/7, 365. There are very few IT departments that are 24/7, 365. And if they are, there are fewer of them that are experts on Microsoft Teams Rooms. So we have experts on Microsoft Teams Rooms round the clock who been there, done that. They've seen this problem. They're pulling in information from thousands of Teams Rooms and learning and getting better at a scale that most IT departments could only hope to get to. So they're good at what they do. They will optimize security, so they'll make sure the devices are secure. They'll make sure all the relative policies are correct. They will help with software and firmware update maintenance. They will fix problems remotely if they can. They can't fix the HDMI cable was unplugged. but they can try to do a reset of the USB bus to try to maybe bring that webcam back online. Not only are they sitting there managing and monitoring your devices, plenty of detailed usage reporting. This is stuff right here that's actually not in Teams Admin Center. So there's some value add as well from reporting and utilization reports. They give you recommendations, proactive advice. They can tell you which, where things are working great, where things might need a little more attention. So managed meeting rooms is a great option for if you're not into managing this all by yourself. As for on-site visits, we can even reference on-site service partners. So we could send somebody out to that small branch office that has no IT presence to replace the HDMI cable or do what needs to be done hands-on without having to send an IT person across the city or across a country to fix an issue. So pretty well-rounded. Yeah, again, remote management, we can update software and firmware, reset USB connection states, force reboots, collect logs to try to debug issues. And then that part in the bottom in the blue is very important. We do not see your meetings. We do not hear your calls. We do not see your PowerPoints. We see none of that. We just see log files. That's all we see. Everything's over port 443, so nothing fancy to be seen there. So I think I've caught up a little. Boom, we're back on back on time. So we reviewed the options for Microsoft Teams rooms all the way from hands-off with unmanaged to hands-off with Microsoft managed and all the different levels in between. Hopefully you're now familiar of knowing which tool, when to use a given tool, when to use, say, group policy versus Intune, and then some things on how to monitor your Teams rooms environment.